Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Babala. Welcome. Wellspring is a group of spiritual deepening programs held in small groups throughout the UU world. We create a circle of trust, a place of deep listening, and a springboard for action. Reading Braiding Sweetgrass was the program we participated in this past year. It was written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a State University of New York distinguished teaching professor at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse. She is founding director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. She works with tribal nations on environmental problem solving and sustainability. Part of that work is about recovering lineages of knowledge that were made illegal in the policies of tribal assimilation, which did not fully end in the US until the 1970s. We offer our heartfelt thanks to the original developers of the curriculum from the Foothills Unitarian Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I have a brief reading from the preface. A sheaf of sweetgrass, bound at the end and divided into thirds, is ready to braid. In braiding sweetgrass so that it is smooth, glossy, and worthy of the gift, a certain amount of tension is needed. As any little girl with tight braids will tell you, you have to pull a bit. Of course, you can do it yourself by tying one end to a chair or by holding it in your teeth and braiding backward away from yourself. But the sweetest way is to have someone else hold the end so that you can pull gently against each other, all the while leaning in, head to head, chatting and laughing, watching each other's hands, one holding steady while the other shifts the slim bundles over one another, each in its turn. Linked by sweetgrass, there is a reciprocity between you. Linked by sweetgrass, the holder as vital as the braider. The braid becomes finer and thinner as you near the end until you're braiding individual blades of grass, and then you tie it off. Will you hold the end of the braid while I bundle it? Hands joined by grass, can we bend our heads together and make a braid to honor the earth? And then I'll hold it for you while you braid.
Good morning, I'm Pam Collins. Brought a braid of sweetgrass. It smells really nice. Anybody want to smell it afterwards? Let me know. As our Wellspring group studied braiding sweetgrass and got excited about the ideas and practices Kimmerer was sharing, at one point we took a breath, and like the good, responsible UUs we strive to be, we raised the issue of cultural appropriation. Wait. Is it okay for us to adopt these practices? One of my favorite stories from Kimmerer was about how when camping with her father, before he took his first sip of coffee in the morning, he would pour a libation on the ground and give thanks for the creation. I really liked that idea, and so I started doing it. It was in the middle of winter, but I'd step out onto my deck each morning, coffee cup in hand, and taking a deep breath of sky, of water, of earth, I'd pour a libation of gratitude. Was I guilty of cultural appropriation? This is an issue I've lived with since completing my doctoral dissertation in contemporary Native American literature and teaching it at SUNY Cobleskill. There I was, a white woman of mostly Irish heritage, teaching the works of indigenous writers, respectfully and humbly, and always acknowledging the limitations of my insight. Still, was I appropriating? The indigenous people I've spoken with over the years assure me that they were glad that their literature was being shared, delighted that non-indigenous youth were learning to appreciate a different worldview. Still, I never felt completely comfortable until I came across the book, Restoring the Kinship Worldview. by Wahimpe Topa, also known as Four Arrows, and Darcia Narvaez. In their introduction, they say this: all people are indigenous to Earth and have the right and the responsibility to practice and teach the indigenous worldview precepts, end quote. I'd like to emphasize that idea. Everyone in this room, unless your ancestors came from outer space, you can tell me privately if that's the case. The rest of us have all come from indigenous cultures, from people who knew that survival meant respecting and protecting the ecosystem of which they were a part. I am most aware of the pre-Christian Celtic worldview. It's astounding the parallels between their beliefs and practices and even some of their art, between those of indigenous people and the ancient Celts. Perhaps some of you have researched the practices of your own ancestral cultures and discovered similar connections. What's important for us to consider at this point is that despite the regrettable and centuries-long shift away from earth-based wisdom, it nevertheless still lurks in our DNA. When I taught indigenous literature, I loved to see the way my students would catch fire. They would get so excited. This makes so much sense, they would say. Why don't we live like this? Why indeed? Similarly, in our Wellspring study, we experienced the same kind of excitement, the same rightness about what we were learning. The indigenous worldview resonates. Still, there are those indigenous people who don't trust the non-indigenous world. I certainly understand why they have kept their stuff secret from the white man for centuries. It was only ever used against them in one way or another. But now push has come to shove, and if this little blue boat we call home goes down, we all go with it. In an article by Four Arrows published in the Critical Education Journal, he relayed the following story, quote, I asked a Cree Sundance chief if he would say a few words. He spoke for nearly 15 minutes about trees being great teachers who, with all their variety and colors, share open spaces and support for one another via the intertwining roots. He said, we all share the same spiritual truths. None of us really own sacred ideas. They belong to the Creator. So we can share because we are all related, and because our world is in trouble and needs everyone to do what we know can work. End quote. Did you know that when the first explorers came to this continent from Europe, so overwhelmed were they by the beauty and abundance here that they believed they had actually found, the biblical Eden? We made fast work of that. I often dream of what things could have been like if the colonizers had opened their hearts and minds to people who for eons had kept this continent healthy and abundant. But they didn't, and now we're in a pickle. Again from Four Arrows, quote, I submit that when we see indigenizing education and media as promoting indigenous worldview, knowledge, and perspectives for human survival, not just indigenous survival, not only will divisions between indigenous people disappear, but we will have recruited allies of people who remember their ancient indigenous ancestry, something every human has. I'd like to believe that Four Arrows' words are prophetic. Reading Braiding Sweetgrass makes one inclined to believe that they are. In summary, I'd like to consider the braid of sweetgrass as a metaphor. Kimmerer's work brings together two strands of thought, science and indigenous wisdom. An exciting pairing. Now, what might be the third strand of the braid? For me, it is the long overdue recognition of kinship between indigenous and non-indigenous peoples on this continent. Dare we believe that Kimmerer's work and that of others like her suggests that we are on the cusp of a collaboration in which all shades of humanity enter the garden together, roll up their sleeves, and get busy regreening the land. That hope is what this braid of sweetgrass represents for me.
Hi, I'm Dave Munro, the service associate this morning. Please join in the chalice lighting words shown on the screen as Pam lights the chalice. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community.
I'm sorry. Okay. Hey, there we are. Okay. Sorry. Good morning. We all look for ways to fill one spirit. When Anny and Sharon told me about the Wellspring class that focused on Braiding Sweetgrass book, I thought it might be a good way to work on my spirit. Well, there are many reminders and thoughts in this book that worked hard on filling my spirit. One of the author's stories really brought back special memories and helped me look inward. I don't know about you, but with gentle reminders from someone else's stories, I remember things that bring a glow into my internal being. The author's story about summer canoe camping in the Adirondacks is special. Every morning when standing atop the rocks above the lake, the author's father would lift the coffee pot and pour coffee out onto the ground. As he was pouring, he would say, "Here's to the gods of Tattawas." By the way, Tattawas is the Indian name for Mount Marcy and translates into the cloud splitter. At the end of the chapter, she provides some insight on why he had this routine. He said it was a kind of respect, a kind of thanks, and he would call it a joy. I really enjoyed the story by itself, but for some reason why it brought back memories of spending time in the woods with my grandfather over 55 years ago. I hadn't thought about these outings in a long time. Upon entering the woods from their home, my grandfather would yell out, "Thank you, Mother Earth." This was not odd to us because my grandfather always had a smile on his face and was full of life. Upon thanking Mother Earth, he would always turn to us and smile and say, "I think we're ready." The experiences were simple but totally fulfilling, picking wild strawberries and blackberries, during which time he would remind us that we needed to share and leave some for our friends. I remember at one time asking him who his friends were, and with a disappointing look, he said, "Why, of course, birds and other animals that need the fruit to help survive." There are many other visits to the woods, including times to track our friends with the hope of seeing them and to say hi to the stars and the moon. Okay, I must admit that my hi to the moon has always been and remains to be a howl. And it happened last night, by the way. So many little lessons to be respectful and thankful to earth and nature, all which brings me joy. I must say that the shared experience of reading the book and sharing with and listening to the Wellspring group helped me fill my spirit. I wish for similar experiences for you all. May there be peace with your spirit. Thank you.
We're going to do just one moment of silence.
Thank you, Anny. Anny and I are both retired environmental lawyers, so who says there's not life after law? And I just have one other comment before I make my remarks. Many of you know Thayer Heath, who turned 101 a few weeks ago. Thayer initially was opposed to moving into this new space, spending all the money. And I said, Thayer, but we can't dance in the old space. So she was immediately excited about moving here. So as noted, Braiding Sweetgrass was the primary book in our Sacred Earth Wellspring course. Sharon introduced Robin Wall Kimmerer. I just want to say one thing. Many of you come to Silver Bay in the fall. We were hoping to get her as the keynote. Meredith said to me, what are our chances? I Googled it. She gets 70 or 80 requests a month to speak. She's spoken at the UN. She's spoken many places. So we have another keynote speaker this fall. It won't be her. The full title of her book, Beyond Braiding Sweetgrass, is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Although Kimmerer does not identify as a Unitarian Universalist, at least so far as I can tell, her parents were longtime members of the Schenectady UU congregation. So she is likely aware of our seventh principle, in which we affirm and promote the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And of course, one of the 6 sources of our faith reads as follows: spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythm of nature. When she started college at Syracuse, Kimmerer told her faculty advisor that she wanted to study botany because, quote, I wanted to learn about why asters and goldenrod look so beautiful together. Her advisor said, I must tell you that is not science. She tried again. I'd like to learn why plants make medicines, why willow bends for baskets, and why strawberries are sweeter in the shade. Also not science, said her advisor. If you want to study beauty, you belong in art school. Kimmerer then followed a fairly traditional professional path, earning a master's degree and a PhD in botany and a faculty position in Syracuse in environmental science and forestry. But early in her teaching career, she was invited to sit with a group of Native American elders whose knowledge of the plant world was much deeper than her own. She was mesmerized by a Navajo woman who, without a day of college botany training, spoke of an intimate knowledge of plants in her area, where each one lived, when it bloomed, who it liked to live near, and all its relationships, stories held by each plant, their origin myths, what they have to tell us. And Kimmerer recognized that the elders' knowledge was so much more whole and rich and nurturing than what she had learned via the traditional scientific path. As a botanist, she explains that she has been trained to ask questions of nature based on scientific inquiry. But as a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, she states that plants and animals are our oldest teachers. In Braiding Sweetgrass, she meshes these 2 sources of knowledge together to take us on what the author Elizabeth Gilbert describes as a, quote, journey that is every bit as mythic as it is scientific, as sacred as it is historical. Braiding Sweetgrass introduces us to this way of knowing by framing understandings of nature in terms of gifts. Potawatomi teachings, for example, instruct learners that each being, plants, animals, rocks, rivers, lakes, and the like, has a gift to give, and that it is our job to listen to that being and learn what its gift is. For example, edible plants give us a gift of food. Kimmerer says this, I have photosynthesis envy, the ability to take these non-living elements of the world, air and light and water, and turn them into food that can then be shared with the whole rest of the world, to turn them into medicine for people and trees and soil. We humans cannot even approach the kind of creativity that plants have. Her work is an invitation to reciprocity, Kimmerer says, a call to recognize the interconnectedness of this world and the innumerable gifts it has given us, and to reply with gratitude, with gifts of our own in return. The earth sustains us, and we have the capacity and the responsibility to sustain her in return. Kimmerer asks, what is my accountability for everything I've been given? How do we honor our responsibility for all that we have been given by the earth, for all that we have taken? In closing, our earth will likely last forever, or at least until our sun burns out. The question that Kimmerer poses is how long life will endure. And the answer hinges on whether human hearts can be turned into true reverence for the gifts that we have been given and to respond accordingly. Amen.
Hello, I'm Barb Spink. In our Wellspring group, one of our exercises was to choose a plant to monitor for the duration of the course. Each week, we checked in on our plant, and we shared with everyone how our plant was doing. Since it was winter, I wanted to pick something that stayed green, so I picked moss. Only later did I learn that one area of Robin Wall Kimmerer's research is the ecology of mosses, in addition to writing Braiding Sweetgrass. So moss is an amazing plant, but I thought you would like to hear about that from moss. If moss could speak, this is what moss would say. First slide, please. Yes, me. I was the first land plant on Earth. For 450 million years, I've been alive. 10,000 species now and counting. And through 4 mass extinctions, I did survive. Through thick and thin, I cover the earth, in sun and shade, or wherever you walk, in the forest, desert, or under the snow. How many of you can grow on a rock? People think I'm a primitive plant, but I am the original bigender being, with both spores and egg cells. Call me he, she, or something in between. I offset more carbon than all the trees in the world. I do not mean to brag, but really, I am the one and only and first eco-friendly shag. And you know those yellow signs? Well, they originated with me, you see, until they were co-opted by some bipeds who hypocritically tread on me. I've heard it all before, that you are the more advanced, you say, but without me, where would you be? And don't we both have DNA? I may be the shortest of plants, but I say quality over quantity. Why, they even named a color after me. But one thing is undeniable, I'm a number 1 in humility.
And for the benediction, we have a poem that was written by Pam Clements, who also participated in the program this year. A trail well marked through second growth forest. Lean sassafras trees flirt, flash yellow mittens, loam sponges underfoot, with moist smell of death recycling. Off-trail old oaks hung with cabled vines, lumped with shelf fungus. Something winks. Hint of a smile. Where the green man resides lies abundance. Wodawas, wild man of the woods, runs mad with his beard of moss. Whatever he touches grows. Star moss, dogtooth violets, partridge berry, Indian pipes spring from his step. Just a pair of eyes aglint in ivy vanishing. Hildegard called it veriditas, greening, freshening, spiritual fecundity, union with nature, by which she meant the cosmos, everything living and dying beneath eyes of the woods. Stump turns to loam, leaf mold to mushroom food. The green man plumps, dampens, makes seed pods burst, dirt in the fingernails, grit in the creases of his hewn face. He is the lord of kudzu and dandelion, of crabgrass, kelp cities, wild grapevines, honeysuckle tangling the fences of lichens clasped to Arctic rock, the twinkle of plentitude. Thanks, everyone. This is the conclusion of our service. Please, oh, actually we have, I'm sorry, we have a chalice that has to be taken care of.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in the words shown on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.